This Sunday on Capital Connection, meet two women running for Congress for the first time.
Serving in the military brought me here, and really quickly, when you join this community, when you get to know people, you realize that we need better representation.
I'm not selling a Democratic message. I am talking to people where they are. I am a person. I'm a mom. I'm a public defender. I'm a school board member.
Republican Esther Joy King challenging Democrat Cheri Bustos for her seat in Congress. Her campaign says she's within striking distance. Plus, Democrat Erika running to replace Congressman John Shimkus in Congress, but that's an open seat after he announced his retirement. She's up against Republican Mary Miller. We talked to her about her push for criminal justice reform. And
there are a number of things that just horrify me about what's going on.
The Illinois Environmental Council reacts to news that methane gas has leaked from a massive underground natural gas storage facility for decades. What the state might do to try and step in. It's all coming up on Capital Connection.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell is asking the tough questions. This is Capital Connection.
Welcome to Capital Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell, reporting from the Illinois State House on this Sunday, October 18. Illinois goes to the polls 2 weeks from Tuesday, and already many of you have cast your ballot early. Around the state, many big races, some of them drawing national attention. One of them is a political newcomer trying to knock off a high-profile Democrat. Congresswoman Cheri Bustos runs the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and works to elect Democrats to key races in swing districts all across the country. But does she run the real risk of inviting a challenge, possibly even losing the district in her own backyard? Her Republican challenger, Esther Joy King, joins me now from the Quad Cities. Esther, that's a district that President Trump won pretty handily in 2016. And that's actually a big reason why Democrats elevated Congresswoman Bustos. They saw her as a Democrat who can appeal across the aisle and connect with pro-Trump Republicans with a Democratic message. I wonder, do you think you have that same quality? Can you appeal to Democrats on the other side of the aisle and convince Democratic voters to come vote for you?
Mark, I have loved getting to meet so many people here in this congressional district, and yes, when I talk with people, when I knock on doors, I have a great experience with both Democrats and Republicans, because what I find we have in common is we want a government that works for us. We want people that will listen to us, that will hear our needs and represent who we are, our values in Washington, D.C., and my opponent has stopped doing that. Right now, she's 100% of the time voting with Nancy Pelosi and with Ilhan Omar and AOC 94% of the time. So Cheri Bustos is doing a better job representing California and New York than she is representing us right here in Western Illinois, and I'm going to change that.
You say she represents California and New York, but her campaign recently says you're just new to the district, that you've just moved there in recent years. I think the most recent record of you voting in that district was just last year in 2019, not even the last congressional race. How do you think you know the district better than she does?
Mark, I have come to this part of Illinois through the Rock Island Arsenal, so serving in the military brought me here. And really quickly, when you join this community, when you get to know people, you realize that we need better representation. And with everything happening in our country, I had to ask myself, if not me, then who? And I have values in common with this community that I am so proud to stand up for and to represent.
Do you agree with President Trump that the Supreme Court should terminate the Affordable Care Act?
Mark, the Affordable Care Act is like a birthday cake that has fallen on the floor. There are some good parts of it, but we need to rebake and start anew with a good plan that will actually solve the healthcare cost crisis for families. Mark, I talk with families so often who can't afford health insurance. Just the other day, a father with 2 kids, so father, mother, and 2 kids, their family, their health care cost has gone up by 4 times. They are now paying $27,000 a year to just have a health care plan for the 4 of them. And they can't afford it, Mark. And so it is absolutely a problem that we need to solve. And yes, I do think we need to actually get a solution, because it is true that the Affordable Health Care Act is not working right now.
When you say, yes, I think we need a solution, does that also mean, yes, you support the Trump administration's lawsuit to strike down the Affordable Care Act in the middle of a pandemic?
Mark, I think we need a better health care plan.
But I don't hear a direct answer to that question. Do you support the lawsuit that's winding its way to the Supreme Court right now?
Mark, in theory, yes, I do. We aren't working to take away people's health care insurance. We are working to bring a better plan that will actually allow affordable, quality health care insurance. That's what's important for families. The fact that there's fear-mongering happening, saying, oh, we're going to take away health insurance, that's a political game, Mark. That's not true.
Well, those are independent studies from people that say 20 million people would, in the immediate aftermath, lose their access to their health insurance plan, and that's to speak nothing of the people who are losing their jobs or going through unemployment right now, who might have been severed from their health insurance plan. Those are not political games or spin. Those are independent studies that have been done. Congressional Budget Office has looked at similar issues of what it would mean and all the churn that would happen. People would lose their health insurance immediately.
I understand that, Mark, and what we need to do is make sure we have a plan that is going to replace it.
President Trump promised to appoint judges to the Supreme Court who would overturn Roe versus Wade. And when he was asked about that question recently, what might Judge Amy Coney Barrett's appointment to the Supreme Court mean for the future of Roe versus Wade, he said that it could be possible. Maybe they get at it a different way. I'm paraphrasing the president here, but he said perhaps they leave it up to the states to allow individual states to decide. There are members of Congress who have said if that happens, they want to codify Roe versus Wade and make it the law of the land, passing that law through Congress. If that vote comes before you as a member of Congress to make Roe versus Wade the law of the land, how do you vote?
That's a complex issue, Mark, and I have a lot to learn on what the effects would be. I don't actually believe that it's going to be a question that comes before Congress, even with Amy Coney Barrett, who is not allowed to state anything about how she would vote. I don't believe there's the votes on the Supreme Court.
She signed her name in 2006 to a newspaper ad that called abortion barbaric, and even in cases that lead to in vitro fertilization, that was something that she did not support in those cases. So she has made her views clear before.
I understand.
And yet you don't think that there's any likelihood that a decision about abortion could come before the Congress?
Potentially. However, I don't believe that even with Amy Coney Barrett being on the Supreme Court as our new appointee, I don't believe there are the votes for Roe v. Wade to come up.
Okay. That said, do the people of the district deserve to know how you would vote if that was to come up?
Mark, I have made very clear, and it's very important to me that everyone know that I am unapologetically pro-life.
So it seems that would be an easier answer then, if that vote were to come up to make Roe versus Wade the law of the land. Wouldn't you seemed unsure how you would vote there.
Mark, again, to pontificate on something in the future that's hypothetical, that's a long, confusing topic that I don't know the answer to right now. But right now, today, I can tell you I'm unapologetically pro-life, and those values that are so important to me will guide me in that question.
All right, Esther Joy King joining us from the Quad Cities there in Rock Island. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, when we come back, she was once homeless. Now she wants a seat in the People's House. Another political newcomer, another woman running for elected office, Erika Weaver, a public defender, a Democrat, looking to run for Congress and replace Congressman John Shimkus as he's on his way out. That's next.
News reports revealed the FBI raided the home of Betsy Lonergan's donor, a former lieutenant in Madigan's machine. She didn't learn her lesson. Instead, she doubled down. With the feds circling in on Mike Madigan, Lonergan established a joint pact with a Madigan-controlled political organization. She just can't help herself. Betsy Lonergan is all about the money. She'll never work for you. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising. When the pandemic had us down, Rodney Davis stood up for us, ensuring American manufacturers and workers could expand production of protective equipment, disinfectants, and other critical life-saving products. Illinois manufacturers are proud of the role that we've played during these challenging times and thank Rodney Davis for protecting our families and frontline workers. Call Congressman Davis and thank him for his leadership during this crisis. American Chemistry Council is responsible for the content of this advertising.
You're a person, not a credit score. But sometimes your score gets in the way of the things you want to do. That's why personal consumer loans through NetCredit are designed to fit real people, like you. Borrow the amount you need, up to $10,000, and choose the repayment terms that work for you. With NetCredit, you may even be able to build your credit history as you repay. NetCredit, a more personal loan. Visit netcredit.com today.
This is what the coronavirus has done to our economy. I'm Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan. It's going to take a lot of work, but we can bring our cities and towns back. It starts by beating this virus with access to quality, affordable health care for everyone, lower premiums and prescription prices, rebuilding manufacturing here at home, job training programs, and help for local small businesses to create jobs. I approve this message because this is how we get Illinois open for business again.
It's either the billionaires or us.
The Chicago billionaires or us.
Seems like an easy decision to me.
Illinois is in financial trouble. We all know that.
The fair tax will decide who pays to get us out of it.
The billionaires or us.
The more you make, the more you'll have to pay. It makes a lot of sense to me.
No one making less than $250,000 will pay a dime more.
And 97% of Illinoisans will get a tax cut. Yes, a tax cut.
It's either the billionaires or us.
Vote yes on the fair tax.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Depending on how many of you filled out the census in this year, or depending on how many of your neighbors might have packed up and moved out of the state, Illinois could lose a seat in Congress after the next maps, the political maps, are redrawn. And it is already losing one of its members of Congress. In fact, the longest-serving Republican from Illinois in Congress, John Shimkus, is bowing out, opening up that seat in the Illinois 15th District, where a race has started between Republican Mary Miller and Democrat Erika Weaver. She joins me now from Mattoon. Erika, good to have you with us. It's a big map, the biggest district on the map in Illinois, but the people of the district are often scattered few and far between, the most sparsely populated district in Illinois. You've said, quote, we're losing jobs, we're losing companies. I wonder if you're alluding to part of that out-migration there. What do you think is driving people out of the state?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I believe that a lot of the reasons that people are leaving, specifically our district, is because our district houses the majority of poverty impacted areas. We do have a lot of blue-collar jobs that are closing. A lot of our factories are closing, from my county here in LSC all the way down to Massac County, where we had Honeywell. And so those are the largest employment opportunities for the majority of people here, and that's why they're leaving, because those jobs are no longer available.
Even during this pandemic, even during this time of so much economic uncertainty, one of the biggest things people look for, voters look for, according to the polls we've seen, is health care. I want to know a little bit more about your plan, your vision of what health care should look like. You told WJPF in July, quote, people want to have health care that is not connected to their jobs. I wonder what that looks like, and I wonder why you think that. Don't most people who have health insurance from their employer want to keep it?
Those who do, but as you know, right now with an economic downturn, we have people who don't have a lot of jobs, right? So for the majority of our district, we have 35,000 people who are reliant on the ACA. And with the impact of COVID, now we have more people who are unemployed. So they don't have healthcare coverage. And so not only do we need to protect the ACA, we need to expand it with something better that will give coverage. And my plan is to get federal dollars to provide for medical mobile units, so that those units can get out to people, because as you described, our district is extremely large, but we don't have a lot of those, hospitals and medical facilities. and we can't fund them either, but we can definitely take care of medical mobile units, and we can get that treatment to people.
Many voters in the 15th who are getting to know you and understand your positions may already know about your resume. You work as a public defender, and matters of the law, I imagine, are rather important to you. You've called for a prohibition on police serving warrants without first knocking at the door. Police officers and sheriffs that we've spoken to say that would put their officers in harm's way.
It would put them in harm's way?
It could, because a no-knock warrant is something they have to get a judge to sign off on. They have to show that they fear there is some dangerous element involved, whether that's a firearm they believe might be in the home. The purpose for that no-knock warrant, officers tell us, is because they think that they need to have the element of surprise. Do you worry that taking that away from them might tie police officers' hands?
I believe that all of the aspects of our law enforcement job, it includes danger, right? There are risks involved, but there are also risks for the American citizens who are on the receiving end of that. And so we've seen too many instances where a no-knock warrant has resulted in very disturbing consequences. And so the consideration is not to put law enforcement in more danger, but to also just be considerate of their lives and the lives of the people who are on the other side of that door. And there are other ways that we can do that. I would never want to put law enforcement in more danger. I work in law enforcement every day.
Mm-hmm. Your campaign website also says you support reclassifying criminal offenses and turning misdemeanor charges that do not threaten public safety into non-jailable infractions, or decriminalize them entirely. Would that include retail theft?
Would that include retail theft in terms of non-jailable offenses?
Or decriminalizing them entirely?
Well, remember, even traffic offenses are misdemeanors. And so, but how we move forward in that process, yes, we could reclassify that, even with retail theft, especially with dollar amounts. And if you look at those thefts, they are classified based on the dollar amount that was alleged to have been stolen.
Your campaign site also says you support issuing citations or tickets, essentially, rather than arrest for low-level crimes. How do you respond to Republicans who might argue that that kind of a soft-on-crime approach could invite exploitation? How do you know that softening penalties won't embolden hardened criminals?
Well, we don't know, but we don't know that what we have is currently working either, because the idea is that we want to rehabilitate people. And I don't know that what we're doing is rehabilitating them, right? We know that recidivism rates are extremely high. We know that we still have a high rate of very violent offenses. And so my response to anyone who says, well, we don't know if that will further embolden people to do or commit wrong acts, we haven't stopped that thus far, and we've had a criminal system in place for a significant amount of time. So I think when you realize that something isn't working, you decide to do something different.
Thank you for joining us to give us an idea what the campaign is all about. 2 weeks from Tuesday, Illinois casts their ballots. We look forward to covering that race and seeing where this winds up. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And when we come back, what should Illinois do to stop a methane leak, an ongoing active problem since the early 1970s happening in rural Illinois? What we found when we went there and what the Illinois Environmental Council wants the state to do about it. That's next.
I'm deeply concerned about the tax hike amendment. They claim they're only going to increase taxes on the rich, but if their out-of-control spending tells us anything, they'll be back for more. I don't trust Springfield politicians to be fair to taxpayers. Do you?
You've heard, it's not what you know, but who you know. And it must be good to know Rodney Davis. His special interest donors sure got lots of perks. And while other businesses waited weeks for COVID relief funds, Rodney Davis's brother got $1 million just 48 hours after he could apply. Then Davis voted to hide the payments from taxpayers. Rodney Davis helps his friends, not you. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Don't look good.
Yeah, it looks like it's both. Just what I don't need.
This is what you do need.
Complete the application within minutes, and if approved, you may get the money you need as soon as the same business day. Get the cash you need fast. Apply online today. Go to cashnetusa.com.
Stay warm and cozy like these dogs this winter. Let your friends at Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing install a new Lennox home comfort system for you. We offer special financing and 0% interest for 60 months on all Lennox systems. Call us today and ask about all the ways we can help take care of the indoor air quality in your home. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend.
Help keep Champaign County safe.
New numbers of COVID-19 cases can be decreased across the country.
As individuals, wearing a mask is something that each of us can do
to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Do it for the people you love and the people around you.
So please wear a mask, indoors and outdoors, and when social distancing is not possible.
We need to work together. Wear it, don't share it.
WCIA is an equal opportunity employer. If your organization is involved in assisting job seekers and you're interested in job vacancies at WCIA3, log on to WCIA.com and click on About Us, then Work for Us for current job postings.
The politicians claim their tax hike amendment won't hurt most families, but that's false. If this passes, there are no restrictions. It's like writing the government a blank check. And I don't believe it's going to stop with the rich. I believe it's going to hit the middle class. Please vote no.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
It's actually leaving the storage formation through fractures and migrating up to the surface. They're not capturing everything, you know, or it wouldn't be bubbling up in water wells, it wouldn't be bubbling up in creeks, it wouldn't be bubbling up in road ditches. That's the problem. You wouldn't have the crop circles out there.
Joining me now with reaction is Jen Walling from the Illinois Environmental Council from Chicago. Jen, NICOR tells us that up to 3 million cubic feet of gas, natural gas, that's methane, escapes from that underground natural gas storage facility at the source of the leak each and every day. They claim that that's how much they capture in these shallower collection wells before they try to pump it all back down into the original storage facility, which we know is already leaking. According to a career state inspector, the signs and images we've seen on the grounds and in the waters above that storage field indicate they're not actually capturing all of what's leaking. What do you see when you look at these images? What does this tell you?
Well, I mean, looking overall at the situation, there are a number of things that just horrify me about what's going on. I mean, with that amount of methane that's leaking, just by NICOR's own numbers, you're looking at the equivalent of, you know, if it's 3 million cubic feet of gas, you're looking at the equivalent of the household usage in a day of 15,000 households. When you look at carbon emissions, that's as much as 23 households would emit in an entire year. And so it's a huge amount of carbon emissions, natural gas that is leaking. And even if they are capturing a number of it, it's hard to make sure that you're capturing all of the natural gas that's being emitted, whether it's from a facility where it's being harvested like fracking or where it's being stored. I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers were much higher in terms of what is leaking. And of course, that is troubling from a perspective of just short-term immediate pollution, like talking to the farmers that you've talked to, the water that's being contaminated, how it's impacting their fields, but it's also an enormous source of carbon emissions. So this situation is extremely troubling, and I'm really glad that it's been brought to light, and I hope that regulators will do more about it.
Moments before we reported this story, we obtained a memo from the Department of Natural Resources written to the Illinois Attorney General back in 2017, saying that ongoing leak requires enforcement action. It says NICOR has been well aware of leakage issues at the Ancona field and, quote, the company has not seriously addressed the ongoing problems at the facility, and the ICC, the Illinois Commerce Commission, has apparently not aggressively pursued any enforcement against the company. How do you react to that part of it, that the Illinois Commerce Commission, the state agency that granted them the permit to put the gas there in the first place, according to the state, has not pursued any enforcement?
Well, this definitely is an issue of a bunch of different state agencies pointing their finger at each other. But I think that it is a surprise to me that the ICC is the one that is regulating the leakage of these emissions. The ICC is not typically an agency that has to do with pollution emissions. I am surprised that it's not DNR or IEPA looking at it, but I think that, despite what these agencies say, there are avenues towards which any agency could enforce something this serious, particularly with the immediate impacts that it's had on people's lives. So whether it's water emissions or the regulation of underground storage, I think there are options that aren't being used here.
All right, Jen Walling joining us from the Illinois Environmental Council with reaction to what we've seen from that ongoing leak dating back to the early 1970s in Ancona Garfield, that storage field that Nicor Gas maintains. Jen, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And we're back in just a moment.
Looking for somewhere safe and convenient to store your stuff? Storage 309 has just what you need. We offer climate-controlled units of all sizes with surveyed 24-hour gate access, and our easy move-in and check-in machine keeps storage simple. Storage 309 in Champaign, Illinois.
It's the home makeover sale at Furniture Row. And right now, the more you buy, the more you save. Save $100 on every $1,000 you spend. Plus, 5 years, no interest, and free shipping. The home makeover sale, on now at Furniture Row.
Is your credit score getting in the way of things you want to do? Personal loans through NetCredit help you borrow up to $10,000. So check your eligibility on netcredit.com today without affecting your credit score. You may even be able to build your credit history as you repay. NetCredit, a more personal loan.
I would recommend Beltone hearing aids to any of my family or friends. I have recommended them to a couple different people who ended up buying Beltone, and they were very satisfied with their Beltone hearing aids. One of the things I like about my new Beltone hearing aids is the fact that I can control them with my phone. I can adjust the volumes between each individual ear or together, set settings for restaurants. The Bluetooth app on them works great. I can hear them in my tractor. I can hear them in my combine. Clarity is just very good.
If you have an electrical, plumbing, or heating and cooling problem, there's only one home service company you need. When you want 100% satisfaction and the finest service, make things easy. Call Edelman. Edelman Inc. is a proud sponsor of the Viewers Club.
Your news every hour in prime time is on News Nation on WGN America. News Nation talked to Michigan's Attorney General after news broke of the alleged plot to kidnap the governor and examined the importance of minorities for COVID vaccine trials.
If I can do this, it's good for me and it's good for everybody else.
News Nation covers your nation every night starting at 8, 7 Central on WGN America. Go to WGNAmerica.com to find WGN America on your cable or satellite provider.
Governor Pritzker released his tax returns from 2019 earlier this week. Well, he just released the cover pages, still has not yet at any time during his campaign or in elected office released the full tax returns. But under his own idea, his own graduated income tax proposal, he'd pay a lot more in those income taxes starting next year. That's if enough voters approve that idea. Over the coming weeks, the last 2 remaining weeks we have here on this program before Election Day, we're going to hear from a lot of voices on this issue of the graduated income tax. It's not every day and not every year that Illinois asks voters, should we change the Constitution? Should we rewrite an amendment? So we're going to get into what that means, what it means for your pocketbook, what it might mean for the future of the state's finances. We hope you'll tune in here to Capital Connection next Sunday. For now, I'm Mark Maxwell. Thanks for watching.